and his government has revoked Cantor's passport and issued an international arrest warrant.
Also, Pepe the Frog, the once harmless cartoon character, has become a far-right meme here in the U.S. In Hong Kong, Pepe is another thing altogether.
There, Pepe is a heroic freedom fighter, enraged by police violence.
We'll hear about both Pepes before the end of our program today. Also, unwelcome attention for President Donald Trump right now. The impeachment inquiry, public testimony in the inquiry began this week. So far, we've heard from 3 veteran diplomats. The fundamental question, did President Trump withhold aid to Ukraine to pressure it to launch a corruption investigation into former Vice President and political rival Joe Biden, as well as Biden's son? In other words, was Trump manipulating American foreign policy for personal political gain? In a tweet, Trump called the hearings a sham. There has been wall-to-wall coverage here in the U.S., upending TV and radio schedules, and the hearings have made headlines around the world.
Сьогодні справа про імпічмент президента Сполучених Штатів Дональда Трампа переходить у публічну.
William Taylor, ancien chargé d'affaires à Kiev.
アメリカのトランプ大統領は8日、
So while everyone else is watching events unfold in Washington, let's turn our attention to Ukraine. After all, their president was at the other end of the July 25th phone call that sparked this whole investigation. Boston Calling's Daniel Hoffman is in the capital, Kyiv.
Basically, the element of the story that's most interesting to Ukrainians is the phone call, the phone conversation between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. And so, essentially, the question is, did Zelensky act the right way in the phone call, or did he not? And the coverage is 100% based on which channel you watch. So the channels that are owned by pro-government, pro-Zelensky oligarchs are saying he did a great job. He said exactly what he needed to say in order to maintain that flow of U.S. military funding for Ukraine. I spoke to an independent media analyst, his name is Vadim Miski, and here's what he had to say.
If it's a favorable channel, everybody will say that, okay, Zelensky do everything good, and no worries, everything goes good, and role of Ukraine is okay, and nothing extraordinary happened.
Now, Zelensky's political opponents say that, no, he acted dishonorably, he should have stood up to Trump, and he shouldn't have went along with Trump's demands.
It's reflected the general attitude of political force and guys who stand behind the political forces in some channels towards Zelensky, nothing more.
So depending on what newspaper, what channel you watch, you're going to get a different perspective. And Ukrainians like...
And attracts a largely nationalist crowd here, one that looks southward in its sport as it does in self-identity. Over 3 years of Brexit negotiations, talk of a hard border between North and South didn't sit well here.
I'm Ryan Gaffney and I identify myself as Irish. We see ourselves as much Irish as people down the road from us.
My name's Brian McAvoy.
My name is Lisa Feeney.
My name's Damien McCullough. I identify as an Irish nationalist.
Irish. Are you British in any sense?
Oh, do I have to answer that? Not a chance, James. No, I'm Irish. Proud of it.
We identify as being Irish. Can't split a country up and tell people what they are and what they should be.
I think we're now starting to see Irish nationalism and Scottish nationalism start to take even a stronger voice and take a stronger mandate than what we had before. And I do think the long-term future of the United Kingdom has been, Brexit is the one thing that has put that most in danger. And remember, 100 years ago, we were separated. So maybe the way Brexit's going, it's coming back to bite the English.
The life we share together is now drifting apart.
People in Northern Ireland have enjoyed 2 decades unhindered by the Troubles. That's not to say past history isn't carried into the present. Politics still turn on religious differences.
And then both looking here, that's it, everyone looking here.
I travelled along the upper Newton Ards Road in East Belfast, past the wedding, beyond the murals, into the suburb of Ballyhackamore. It's an area predominantly Protestant, albeit not a political pigeonhole.
My name is Paul Murphy.
I'm Alison McLenahan.
I self-identify as being Northern Irish. I want to be European.
My name is Anne McGarvey and I'm proud to be British.
That's a culture I identify with and love more than my own culture, and that's actually the culture I want to be part of. I don't want to be part of British culture.
And the Prime Minister is no Prime Minister.
We were always told that people in England didn't care about Northern
So
Ireland.
far we've heard from
and I
three
think the thing
veteran
about Brexit
diplomats.
is that
The fundamental
that's
question,
proven
did
to be the
President
case.
Trump withhold
And he's
aid
trying to
to
sell us
Ukraine?
down the river.
Why do you say that?
He's wanting a united Ireland and we don't want it. He's going to have riots on his hands if he doesn't watch himself.
So far we've heard
What's the name of this?
Cathedral project. Unsurprisingly, Brexit is having very differing effects amongst people's views of Irish unity. So those who are in favour of Irish unity are increasingly likely to think it's going to happen and that they want it to happen. Those who are opposed to Irish unity or wary of it are increasingly resistant to it. And it's that polarisation and sort of reinforcement of difference that we're beginning to see through Brexit that would be quite worrying, I think, for the longer term peace process.
The fundamental question, did President
That
Trump
pessimism plays out here. At unionist meetings in the East Belfast Constitutional Club, they've aired their anger at Boris Johnson's Brexit plan for a customs border down the Irish Sea.
My name is Moore Holmes and I identify as British.
The talk in here is ominously of protest.
As soon as you allow the threat of violent republicanism to achieve political gain, you do run this risk of tensions being heightened, extreme sensitivities, and these public protests and rejection can lead to other things. And I would first and foremost condemn that. I wouldn't want to see that. I don't want to see that happen. But there is a risk.
Back across the Irish Sea, I headed to Carnarvon in Wales. In this bilingual town, the Carnarvon Male Voice Choir recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. Back across the Irish Sea, I headed to Carnarvon in Wales. The faces have changed over the years. So has the outlook.
Fenyw, Griffith Penryn-Jones, dwi'n gweld fy hun o Cymro, ac tan yn ddiweddar, dwi'n gweld fy hun o Prydeinwyr hefyd, ond dwi ddim o sicr bellach.
Has Brexit made you feel less British?
Yes. It splits us. I mean, in a sense, I understand, for instance, how the Scots feel, and I feel like, you know, if Scotland leaves the UK, I would feel like a little brother who sees his big brother leave the patriarchal home and make his own way in the world. And I would be glad for him, but I'd be sad for me.
My next destination was England, the powerhouse behind the Brexit vote. Before we hear the English voices, let's look at the views expressed in a YouGov poll for Sky News. Leave voters across Britain were asked if Scottish independence was a price worth paying for Brexit. 41% said yes. Asked if Scotland becoming independent would be a positive thing anyway, 17% said yes. Leave voters were asked if a united Ireland would be a price worth paying for Brexit, 25% said yes. Asked if Northern Ireland joining the Republic would be a positive thing anyway, 17% said yes. And Leave voters were asked if Welsh independence would be a price worth paying for leaving the EU, 28% said yes. Asked if Wales becoming independent would be a positive thing anyway, 10% said yes. The English perspective on the relevance of the Union is pivotal. If the biggest and most powerful partner in the UK decides it doesn't have a future, the UK doesn't have one. As our poll reflects, English nationalism will be a factor in this election.
I think the truth is that there's a set of voters who want England's interests protected, right? And if for them that means leaving the EU, then if that had to be the end of the Union, they would go along with that. That doesn't mean they're against the Union, they want it to break up, but if that's what it came down to, that's what they would prioritise.
4 in 1, 41. 73, 73. 60.
Can I just give you a joke?
Yeah, go on.
Did you know that Oxo had bought a new cube for Brexit? Do you know what it's called?
What?
Laughing stock.
They like a laugh at the bingo in Belport, Derbyshire. I went here to get a public take on the political debate around English interests.
I'm Heather Ufton, and I would say I am English. I feel we're a bit hard done to. We're the nation that can't be who we say we are. We have to be British. I don't see it's very fair that Scotland gets and Wales get to be Scottish and Welsh, but we can't be English. I think that happens a lot in society at the minute.
The West Midlands saw the highest Brexit vote in Britain. How do they see Britain itself? Here in Walsall, 67.9% of people turned their back on the union with Europe. What do they care here for the union closer to home?
I'm Dudley Swain. I'm a member of the United Kingdom.
I'm Claire and I identify as English.
I'm English, but I still see myself as a member of the UK.
If leaving the EU meant the breakup of the United Kingdom, how would you feel about that?
I think we need to. We need to break up and go. It's been mucking around for 2 years now and we just need to go.
And if that meant the breakup of the United Kingdom?
So be it.
I'm not happy that UK should break up. I think that Wales and England and Scotland and Northern Ireland are a great integral unit, but we've got such friction from Scotland. My inclination is that the next government ought to go to Scotland and say, we've got an agreement that you should leave us in 12 months' time. We can save a lot of money, you can be independent, see how it gets on.
Of course, there is, as they say, only one poll that counts. The country will speak with a collective voice on December the 12th. That will be the definitive verdict on the state we're in and on the states of the Union.
Well, James Matthews reporting there, and here on All Out Politics, we're going to be exploring many of those themes, hosting debates during this election campaign to discuss the issues that are being talked about across the nations of the United Kingdom. And we start tomorrow morning in Belfast. Please let us know which issues affecting Northern Ireland are important to you. You can send me your questions and your thoughts at Adam Bolton Sky, or email us at sky.today@Sky UK. This is All Out Politics. Coming up next, as Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn limber up to go head-to-head in the first television leaders' debate, we'll examine the relationship between politicians and the media.
Lookouts, armed with bows and arrows. This is a medieval siege in an ultra-modern city. At the entry point, everyone is searched. This student is 19 years old and studying accountancy. He's our guide to the fortress.
It's kind of like a castle. You have a centre and then defence, spreading out.
Yeah. This is the front line, and this the second one.
Protesters are adapting their tactics and learning from each other's example.
What are we heading to now?
Kind of control room.
Control room.
Yeah.
So this is where the strategy set, the tactics.
I would say not the strategy set, because we have no leaders. All the strategy the group, all the people try to discuss.
This is the nerve centre of a self-organising swarm intelligence, where battle plans are drawn up, along with enough supplies to last a siege.
Just to give you an idea of the level of organisation, this used to be a food kiosk, and now it's been turned into a command station, basically. You've got phone chargers here, you've got maps up there, you've got video live streams of other protests around Hong Kong. You've got a food menu in case you want to get a bite to eat. This whole area here is a hive of activity.
The kids have taken over the school, but these kids carry petrol bombs. It's not just the university they control. They've shut down this cross-harbour tunnel, a major route. Digging in on this scale is a new tactic, an escalation. But the goal is still the same, to preserve Hong Kong's traditional freedoms from mainland China. The Hong Kong government says it will not negotiate with violent protesters, and its chief executive, Carrie Lam, has branded them enemies of the people. As night fell, the police still stayed away. A chance to test more homemade weapons. They mean serious damage. In the meantime, some rest, while others keep watch. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Hong Kong.
Well, Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn are going head-to-head tomorrow in the ITV Leaders debate. It's the first time the leaders of Labour and the Conservatives have debated on screen for 4 years. Joining me now is Dorothy Byrne. She's the head of News and Current Affairs at Channel 4, and her McTaggart lecture at the Edinburgh Television Festival has now been turned into a handy stocking filler. Trust me, I'm not a politician from short books. We're also joined by Mark Damser, former controller of BBC Radio 4. Welcome to you both. Now, Dorothy, I know you and I have discussed this in the past, going all the way back to 2010, where we had those three-way debates. How do you feel about the way debates have worked out in this election campaign?
Well, I think that the politicians must have been reading my book, because they are actually doing debates this time round, and I think that that is a great step forward, because we know that trust in politicians is at an all-time low, according to the last survey, 9%, whereas trust in TV is 71%. So if politicians want us to trust us, want the voters to trust them, then I think they're doing the right thing by putting themselves on TV and holding themselves accountable.
These have been bilateral negotiations with both the BBC and ITV. Both of them have gone for just the two, Corbyn and Johnson. Is that the right answer, do you think?
Yeah, unquestionably. Though it's a very complicated jigsaw puzzle. You're having to balance up several different criteria. Who is likely to be the Prime Minister? Well, the answer is it's only one of two. Versus other notions of fairness, the fact that the SNP is substantially the largest party in Scotland, what a TV programme looks like when it's got 7 people all on a bar stool as opposed to just 2 people and an interlocutor or a moderator. And in the end, they both come up with rather similar answers, which is you need something which is head-to-head, and then you need something which has got all of them there in different formats, and that seems to me to be entirely fine, and the public is well served by doing that.
Does that mean Joe Swinton's being hard done by?
I think there will be different forms of debates on different broadcasters, and in the end, I think the other parties will be heard as well, but I see the point that there are only 2 people who can be the Prime Minister.
Now, I mean, we've all been in this business a long time, and the thrust of your book now is that politicians are becoming increasingly evasive, not wanting to be held to account with, and indeed you've been trying to set things up for this election which haven't worked out.
Well, I think that this election is a bit better than previous elections, to be honest.
But you're trying to get Sajid Javid, for example.
Well, that was a shame, but we move on in life. But I think politicians tend to want to control the message themselves, and what we have to persuade them of is be heard through journalists and through television, because people trust TV and they need to hear your policies being talked about properly. I mean, we've heard in the last...
They do it less? I mean, are they less available politicians today?
Well, you know that.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure, I know.
Yeah, you know, but I'll tell everybody else. Yes, they used to do press conferences every morning. And if you think of the avalanche of policies we've had from every party in the last few days, I mean, really experienced journalists I know say they can't keep up with them. They can't quite understand what these policies mean. And it would be fantastic, although I don't think it will ever happen again, if every morning every party leader sat there for an hour and answered in-depth questions about their policies.
Why do you think they become more evasive? I don't think we can deny that they have.
So over the last electoral cycle, they definitely have. But I've been quietly quite impressed by what's been going on over the last few weeks. On Sky, ITV, Radio 4, Channel 4, Newsnight, I've seen some really tough questioning. And I think that the tone adopted by most interviewers has got self-consciously and appreciably tougher. I think there are lots of reasons for that. I think that what's happened in the States and with Trump is part of it. I think the fact that there's been so much said and written, Dorothy's contributed to it, about the extent to which politicians have been ducking and diving out of different formats and difficult formats has been helpful. And without wishing to name people in the battle of honour, as it were, I think a lot of people have done a pretty good job.
I mean, there are two factors. One is they don't need mainstream media as much as they used to because social media allows them to go out, if you like, unmediated. And the other is that both politicians and the media seem to have lost a lot of public trust.
Yes, although I think differentially, and I think Dorothy's point is right. And so everybody knows it's a soundbite itself about the rise of social media, the election is being fought on social media. That's not entirely true. The size of audiences that big TV and radio programs get is not to be dismissed, and their influence is understood to be different to what's going on in social media. One thing I think that the mainstream media could do and is not doing is calling out what's going on social media. Now, it happened once early on in the campaign here, where Keir Starmer and a contribution he made on a programme was mucked about with by the Conservative Party, and mainstream journalists got onto it and called the Conservative Party out about it. But there's been no consistency in the effort applied to interpreting the social media election on the mainstream election.
BBC are all trying to do this.
Yeah, I mean, we've all got services. You should watch Channel 4 News.
I do nothing else but, Dorothy.
We've got a special service calling out social media.
Yeah.
But politicians should also be aware, because I love a statistic, that the last Reuters Institute report showed that only 10% of people trust news on social media.
Yeah.
I know we're all worried about social media, but I also think viewers, the public are aware that a lot of it is just tosh.
But by calling it out, and calling it out in programmes which have high reputations for trust and fairness and integrity, you diminish the chance that people will keep on getting away with that kind of tactic. And,
I mean, Dorothy certainly calls out in this book. I mean, it's fair to say you are getting increasingly frustrated, is it, or not?
I think I'm on the, I say I am genuinely on the side of politicians. They are not doing themselves any favours. They think that by trying to control the message, not doing in-depth interviews, running away from difficult questions, it's doing them some good. But actually, it's not just harming them because they are not trusted, it's harming democracy. And I think one of the big points I look at is what is happening in the United States, where there's no trust.
Thank you both very much indeed. Two big debates to look forward to, including us in Northern Ireland tomorrow. You're watching All Out Politics.
Winter is warmer in Thailand. Book now, travel now. Amazing Thailand.
This is All Out Politics. Coming up in the next hour, Boris Johnson promises tax cuts to make the most of Brexit as party leaders make their election pitches to business leaders. Heading to the courts, the Liberal Democrats and the SNP challenge their exclusion from tomorrow night's ITV election debate. Also today, standoff in Hong Kong as police fire tear gas at protesters. And lawyers for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein join the criticism of Prince Andrew for his lack of remorse over his relationship with the convicted sex offender. Good morning, welcome to All Out Politics and our second hour of news, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. The election campaign moves into top gear this week as we begin to get the full details of what the parties are planning to put before the voters in their manifestos. Tomorrow evening, the first leaders' debate takes place, with the SNP and Liberal Democrats heading to the High Courts this morning to try to overturn the decision to exclude them. Today, though, business dominates the campaign agenda as the main party leaders all make their pitches to business leaders at the CBI conference.
Businesses up and down the country are telling me that uncertainty is the real killer for them. They can't make hiring decisions, investment decisions. There's a whole raft of investment waiting to happen once we get Brexit over the line.
What we're doing is we're investing £250 billion in the infrastructure of this country. That's a huge amount of investment, but everybody knows that our infrastructure simply is not working. Our trains are overcrowded. People can't get a seat on a train in the morning to go to work. They're having to pay exorbitant amounts of money to get there. You know, whether it's the train service, whether it's the health service, whether it's broadband, we need to renew our infrastructure.
Well, our business correspondent Paul Kelso is at that CBI conference in Greenwich. And Paul, what are they saying to you about their conference effectively being turned into an election hustings?
Well, they welcome party leaders coming here. It brings attention on the CBI, of course. We're just across the water from Canary Wharf, and business issues in this election will loom large today. It is quite an unusual gathering in that this conference is being held during an election campaign, which is not usually the case. But also the main party leaders, neither Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn, is coming here, even as far as I can tell, particularly pretending to have a particularly popular message. Boris Johnson will announce some tax measures, a review of business rates, or not clear on when or what exactly shape that will take, and a lifting of the threshold for national insurance rates for employers. But his central message of the quotes we've seen so far is going to say he knows big business doesn't like Brexit. He knows the CBI was the most vocal organisation in saying that. He doesn't apologise for a measure which, by almost every assessment, will be damaging to the economy, but he says he will end the uncertainty. So a very familiar refrain, I suspect, is where he will end up, saying he will get Brexit done. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, who will follow him, previous Labour leaders have come here and attempted to win at least the confidence, if not the full support of business. Well, Jeremy Corbyn's slate of reforms are never going to be overwhelmingly popular. He's going to be talking about hundreds of thousands of new apprenticeships, but he will be telling business leaders in the room that they will be paying for some of that via this National Investment Fund, which is going to come from the appropriation, effectively, of 10% of every large company. I think leaders here will be listening to his tone and whether he'll be saying, we're going to change the economy fundamentally, we would like your support in doing so, or whether he will be a little more aggressive in his tone. That will leave Jo Swinson this afternoon to come through the middle. She will say that the Liberal Democrats, by promising to cancel Brexit, remain in the European Union, which is what most of the voices in the room here will want. They are the natural party of business. So much of the message from today, I think, will be in the reaction of business leaders and whether they believe that they can put their confidence in either of the two leaders most likely to end up as Prime Minister, because whatever does happen in the election, they can be pretty clear after today that change is definitely coming.
Paul Kelso at the CBI, thank you, and we'll have the Conservative leader's speech to that conference coming up at the end of this hour. The Liberal Democrats and the SNP are taking ITV to court over being excluded from tomorrow's leaders' debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. Well, joining me now from the High Court is Sky correspondent Enda Brady. Enda, thank you for joining us. Obviously, the SNP and the Liberal Democrats are different parties fighting each other, but are they making the same argument?
The same argument, essentially, Adam. Two separate challenges being heard today in one legal case at the High Court. And their point of view, quite simply, is that it is unlawful to exclude their leaders from this debate tomorrow night on ITV. Now, as it stands, ITV are hosting a debate between the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, going head-to-head with the man who wants to be Prime Minister, Labour's Jeremy Corbyn. ITV say that once that debate is out of the way, there will then be the opportunity for other leaders to have their opinions and voices heard in a series of interviews that will be broadcast as well. That is the format ITV have in mind. The Liberal Democrats and the SNP say that it is unlawful to exclude their leaders, Joe Swinson and Nicola Sturgeon, from that debate tomorrow night. So it's all going to court, Court 73 here today. Earlier on, I ran into Ian Blackford, who is the SNP's leader in Westminster, and he feels they have a very robust case indeed today. This is what he told us.
There is clear evidence that ITV have brought forward themselves, that people make their minds up based on these debates. We can't have a situation that the third party in the United Kingdom, the Scottish National Party, the party of government in Scotland, is not part of it. That is extraordinary that we should be frozen out of this.
So that hearing due to get underway in about 10 minutes, and of course time is of the essence here today, really, because the debate due to take place tomorrow night, so we will need a decision at some point later on today. But the SNP and the Liberal Democrats both arguing the case that they feel the decision to exclude their leaders is quite simply unlawful.
Enda Brady, thank you very much. The three main party leaders are all speaking at the CBI conference in Greenwich, South London today. So whose message is likely to be most appealing to business leaders? Joining me now is Josh Hardy. He's the CBI's Deputy Director General. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Hardy. If I could ask you first of all, presumably the CBI have got a manifesto of demands from the party leaders as well. What do you want from them?
Well, I think what we're hoping to see today, and it's great that this is the first day during the general election when we've had the leaders of the three parties here, is a real focus on how business and government can come together. Because we face such challenges in the UK, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's skills, whether it's tackling regional inequalities. We'll only address those if you have all the investment and skills of politicians and business together. So we want to hear the desire to work together and to create a UK that is genuinely competitive so that businesses can thrive and invest.
Now, Boris Johnson made his famous remark, F business. Jeremy Corbyn is pretty clear that he doesn't like capitalists and fat cats. So do you feel you have got any partners in the main parties?
I think the businesses do feel that maybe the last 3 years will be looked back on as sort of the wasted years, where maybe that dialogue between business and government hasn't been as strong as it can be. But let's hope that today marks a change, because 2020 should be a year that defines a generation. And it'll only do that if we do get back to working really closely together. So yes, for each party, there are policies which business are really enthusiastic about and policies that cause concern. Let's get to a stage where we can sit down and work those through.
Which ones are you really enthusiastic about?
I think we've seen that it's likely that the Prime Minister today talks about reforming a broken business rate system. That's great. That's something that businesses have been calling for a very, very long time, alongside R&D incentives and NICS contributions. Similarly, from the Labour Party, some very interesting ideas about fixing the apprenticeship levy and making sure that we're providing the skills that can help us to hit that net zero target. So I think there are lots of ideas that businesses will really, really get behind. But we have to be clear, for all of them, this relies on a Brexit deal that actually does deliver frictionless trade, regulatory alignment, access to people, a deal for services. So we've got to get that Brexit deal done in a good way and then focus on the things that really matter to people and to growth.
How do you feel about Labour's plans for nationalisation and renationalisation?
Well, look, there's no secret that we are very, very concerned about them, and businesses across the country. It's causing real problems in investment, with a lot of businesses actually now thinking, well, maybe after the BT announcement last week, maybe am I next? It costs a huge amount of money, and it's not clear that actually it will deliver benefits. There are better ways of doing this, better ways of actually private finance, public sector coming together and actually improving services, improving costs. So we think nationalisation is, frankly, quite a big distraction given the other things that we need to do. So it is something that's causing deep concern.
And similarly, what are your members telling you about Brexit? What's the impact so far, and what they think the impact will be when we leave?
Well, I think we've seen the impact on the economy. The economy, growing at about 1%, the lowest growth in a decade. Investment really, really struggling. And each time we hit a cliff edge, that has an immediate impact on businesses' ability to employ, to pay great wages, to innovate. So I think we do need to bring certainty to the situation, but we need to do that with a good deal, and we need to avoid future cliff edges that are so damaging to our economy. Business has been clear since day one after the referendum about what they need. And we hope today actually to hear a bit more from the leaders about their plans.
And is the deal reached by Boris Johnson, is that a good deal in your terms?
I think it does have benefits in that it brings the country into transition, and that is very useful, assuming that doesn't lead to another cliff edge. But there were concerns about whether it leads to a very bare bones free trade agreement that is little better than no deal. So whoever wins the general election, maybe some of the politics, some of the heat will come out of the Brexit debate, and we can have a more sensible conversation that is built from the economic evidence up.
Well, why do you think that might happen?
Well, I think we probably say it in hope rather than necessarily than expectation. But if a party does, at the moment there's a lot of campaigning for votes, quite understandably, and that leads to a lot of politics. We would hope that if there is a stable government on the other side, that the economics can shine through a bit more than they have done in the past.
What about the workforce and immigration? What would be a business-friendly immigration policy?
Well, businesses understand that free movement is likely to come to an end, and I think we've been very clear that it is possible to have an immigration system that is both open and controlled. And I think key to that, there's a lot of talk at the moment about letting the best and the brightest into our country, which is great. We need the best and the brightest, but we also need labour. If you're to build 200,000 houses, you absolutely need the skilled architects, but you also need the electricians, the labourers to get that job done. In our economy at the moment, we have skill shortages and labour shortages. We also need to back that with huge business investment in skills. That's happening. I mean, if we think that 9 in 10 of our workforce is going to need retraining by 2030, that's a gargantuan undertaking. So we need all of us working together with a system that is flexible and meets our economic needs in order to achieve that.
Mr. Hardy from the CBI, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, a violent standoff between anti-government protesters and the police in Hong Kong is continuing this morning. Officers are using tear gas to stop campaigners trying to leave a university campus after they came under sustained attack from petrol bombs overnight. Sky's Asia correspondent Tom Cheshire reports.
Just before dawn, the rumours started spreading, and so did the fire. Protesters set their defences ablaze, convinced the police were here inside Polytechnic University.
The police come from the roof now.
They're cornered and they're spent. Police control every exit, and they've threatened to open fire with live ammunition. The protesters hid themselves behind walls of fire. All summer and now autumn, they've been saying, if we burn, you burn with us. But that was not how today would go. Today was about running. Some protesters cast aside the black uniform. They tried to slip past the police in small groups, undetected, plainclothes protesters. But a bigger group tried to break the siege directly. Petrol bombs ahead of the battle column, bricks as covering fire. It was a desperate procession, soon under a shroud of tear gas. They were beaten back. forced to retreat to their ever more vulnerable fortress. The breakout became a rout.
So what do you do now?
I want to go home. The police have threatened to use live ammunition, real bullets. Are you afraid?
I'm afraid in any time, but we should not give up easily because we are fighting for our freedom.
It's been an exhausting and uncertain night, and these are the ones who are still left. There are still a few of them, but they are exhausted, they are surrounded, and they don't know what to do.
This is the 7th day of the occupation. There cannot be many more. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, inside Polytechnic University, Hong Kong.
You're watching All Out Politics. Coming up next. Cartoonists having fun at the expense of Prince Andrew this morning. We'll have a look at all the cartoons and opinion pages of the newspapers in The View.
Tens of thousands of young people will be at risk of homelessness this Christmas, according to a new study. Centrepoint has collected data from councils across England, asking them how many young people are homeless in their local area. Well, Brooke Morgan was homeless in her youth and got some help with Centrepoint.
They put me in temporary accommodation, or one of what is known as their hostels, which was amazing because I don't ever think people can appreciate space until space is the one thing they need. They gave me a space, but it wasn't just a space. It was somewhere for me to clear my mind and become stable, and also continue with the progression of my career. So, yeah.
Does it surprise you that Centrepoint is saying that up to 22,000 young people could be homeless this Christmas?
It's not surprising because of all the cuts that have happened. But if anything, the emotion that just comes to me is just hurt and upset, really.
So as part of the issue, and we talk about this a lot with homelessness, is that we sort of have a view of homeless people without actually understanding how they get there, and that really it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, I always say take that view and scrap it and just talk to real people. There's a lot of family breakdowns. Homelessness isn't always on the street. As you know, I was hidden homeless, so I was sofa surfing with family and friends. But even that is quite an intrusive and not a safe environment mentally. It may be loving family, but it's still not safe mentally because you just don't have your own space. You're not meant to be here, so there's nothing that you can really say or do. But you have to be grateful and put a smile on it because you've got a roof over your head. You can't complain. And you don't want to complain because you want to be grateful.
Well, time for The View now, looking at the opinion pages of today's newspapers. Trevor Kavanagh in The Sun says Prince Andrew's excruciating television interview was a masterclass in reputational suicide and an insult to the intelligence of the British people. Libby Purvis in The Times agrees that the interview was a car crash, and it's clear the deluded Duke has lost his way, she says. In the Daily Telegraph, Tim Stanley says the failure to acknowledge the seriousness of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes shows a callous disregard for victims. Dominic Lawson, writing in the Daily Mail, says he believes Prince Andrew, but his honesty doesn't excuse a naive royal arrogance. In the Daily Express, Patricia Flynn says the interview may have been cringeworthy, but it's not up there with the Queen's Annus Horribilis in 1992. The royal family remains well set for the future, he believes. The cartoonists all have fun at the Duke's expense this morning. The Queen is in charge of the Royal Fire Engine amid reports that Prince Andrew's pants are on fire in Morland's cartoon in The Times. And Pizza Express has a new pizza on the menu in Blower's cartoon in The Telegraph. It's called The Alibi. Well, we're also going to look today at some of the political opinions that have been expressed in the newspapers. And joining me to talk about those are Dalia Gabriel, contributing editor at Novara Media, and Ali Mirage, who's a columnist for the article. Well, we didn't give you the rundown there, but it's quite interesting. We got this article by James Kirkup, writing The Times, saying that One Nation conservatism isn't dead yet. And then we got Nick Timothy basically saying precisely the opposite, that Boris Johnson has redrawn the political map and changed what it means to be conservative. Which do you think is got it right.
Well, I think there's a little bit of both here, and there's a little bit of hope for both sides. I think Nick Timothy, who of course ran the 2017 campaign and didn't do a particularly great job, the point that he's making here is actually quite an interesting one, which is that Conservative Party is actually going to be reconnecting with working class voters, which the Labour Party, which is its natural territory, has completely ignored. And now with an incomprehensible position on Brexit and talking about unfettered free movement and totally disregarding any concerns that people up in the North and the Midlands have around immigration, is not going to play well. There's no innate right that the Labour Party has to these votes. So the Conservative Party is positioning itself very sensibly to go and go after this vote bank, and is also in a much more unified position as a party than it has been for many years. And that's because Boris, to be fair to him, has had the gumption to purge people who were not going to support his withdrawal agreement. So he's in a much better and stronger position. I mean, he's up against a Labour Party that effectively is saying a borderless world is the future, and sneering at its own former core supporters.
Now, darling, you may not like it, but is the newly reforged Conservative Party in a better and stronger position electorally?
Well, what we're seeing, I think it's very interesting that we're talking about the idea of the political map being redrawn. I completely agree that it is, and I would put the origin of that at the 2008 recession, which was basically when the economic and political system that we have, which is based on financialization, on speculation and on gambling, was basically discredited. Now we have the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have both turned into parties that have offering different solutions that are far away from the kind of third wayism of Blair and Cameron. In the Tory party, we're seeing this kind of culture wars approach, this approach of stoking up anti-immigrant sentiment, of talking about the EU as a kind of culturally coded way. And then we have the Labour Party, which has moved back towards its kind of socialist origins and is looking at the kind of bread and butter issues that affect working class people.
Has the Labour Party in the process lost touch with its traditional working class roots?
So I completely disagree. I don't think that anti-immigrant sentiment is what defines the working class. I think it's about the bread and butter issues of being working class, the lack of access to social care, the lack of access to adequate healthcare, long NHS waiting lists, inadequate housing. These are things that are shared across the working class, whether you're black, brown or white. But what I would say is that Boris Johnson is relying on the idea that people dislike immigrants more than they care about their children having a high-class education, than having access to well-funded NHS services and social care.
I've got to disagree with you, Dahlia. I mean, look, I think the immigration point, I don't think the Conservatives are playing into some sort of unpleasant immigration stereotypes. I think what they're doing is saying that, look, people want to control the border. They want to have an immigration policy that is sensible and fit for purpose. And when you have a situation where people are coming in and accessing the NHS without paying their fair dues, where you have people being able to access benefits, and now they're coming in and saying, the Tories are saying they won't allow this to happen for 5 years, this strikes the ordinary voter, I would think, as quite fair and quite sensible.
Immigrants are not the cause of depleted resources in the NHS.
No, but the
Immigrants are not the cause of lack of access to housing.
No, we're talking about perception here, how people see it.
Perception, but I do think that everyday people can understand that when you underfund an institution, when you make these considerable cuts to the NHS and to education services, that those services will then struggle. I actually think that there is very much a shared experience of being working class in this country that exists across migration and across racial
The problem with that, we'll have to wait for the result of the election.
Well, exactly. That's
but the problem with that is looking at the opinion polls.
Well, there's a 17-point lead.
Well, actually, we find that in the opinion polls, the concerns about immigration have actually fallen from being in the top
not amongst
range.
working class voters. And the other thing is that, I mean, look, the people are going to have a choice on December the 12th between, a leader of the Labour Party who thinks that Venezuela is a model of good government, and a Conservative Party that is essentially trying to articulate
further
some of the
deregulation and selling off of our
have.
NHS to the US market, which will make things significantly worse for working class people across this country. When we look at the bread and butter issues and not these kind of cultural.
Okay, well,
is rampant nationalisation where the country
speaking of bread and butter, what about this article by John Harris, who I always find does provide food for thought, writing in The Guardian. Now, he's basically saying that Labour's pitch, talking about nationalisation, talking about more control of the state from Westminster, is old politics. That actually, if Labour was really progressive, and you know, John Harris is very much on the left from where he writes from, should be talking much more about regionalisation and localisation. What do you say to that?
And I think that this is actually what is definitely happening in the kind of membership and activist base, and the leadership are listening. We have, for example, things like the Preston model, which has been developed in a Labour region by a Labour council, which has basically looked at when John Lewis, in Preston basically, John Lewis withdrew its plans to build a shopping centre to regenerate. And instead of kind of declaring crisis, the Preston model was basically about mobilising local institutions like higher education rather than the model of outsourcing in order to kind of focus on community wealth building. And there's been a lot of conversations on generalising that Preston model
you've got a Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, who are instinctively big state politicians. I mean, you know, McDonnell was not on the GLC. Corbyn hasn't changed his view on any policy for 30 years. These are big state socialists. And if you look at what John Harris is actually saying in his article, what he's saying actually smacks of Cameronian big society type stuff, where you're devolving power to local enterprises to actually take control of their own future. This is a very conservative agenda that John Harris is...
power while simultaneously crippling of any resources to do anything, which is the Cameronite model. And when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn not changing his views on anything for 30 years, that's because when he opposed apartheid, when he was for gay marriage, when he was for all of these different things, unfortunately for the Conservative Party, he was right, so he hasn't needed to change his views on many of these things.
But rampant nationalisation of everything from broadband to the railways to Royal Mail, I mean, how is that a prescription for government in the modern age? That is not. But the concept of municipal socialism, and I know this by talking to Labour policymakers, that municipal socialism is really being taken very seriously at all levels of policymaking in the
on the other hand,
Party.
take two of our big cities, London and Manchester. Now, Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan are both people basically running from Corbyn Labourism. They have a different interpretation of Labourism, and the other metropolitan centre is controlled by the Conservatives. So I think it's quite difficult to say that the present Labour leadership is really attuned to this.
Well, and also, I just don't think that the voters... I just think the voters will not buy this militant liberalism that plays well in Islington but isn't going to play well in Dudley North.
Well, I very much believe that, first of all, the concept of community wealth building and the concept of regional politics is being discussed seriously in the Labour Party far more than any other party.
But why isn't it coming through?
I don't see...
Do we hear much about it? All we hear is about nationalisation...
Do we care about what we hear about or what the reality is? There's many reasons why we don't hear about...
It's an election campaign. We should be hearing about these... If this is such a big thing in the Labour Party...
I'm telling you about how the Preston model was developed under a Corbynite Labour Council, and how that is something that the policymakers are taking very seriously as a model that we want to roll out throughout the country. And the tradition of municipal socialism is alive and well in the contemporary Labour Party. And what I would say is that the reason...
What examples do you point to?
Well, the Preston model is an example.
But we don't hear any of this from Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. All we've heard over the weekend is this plan to nationalise and to
if we listen more to what Jeremy Corbyn
which will cost billions of pounds, totally pie in the sky.
Rather than it's not pie in the sky. These are the same people who would say that building the NHS at a time of war was also pie in the sky.
But Dahlia, look, the taxpayer essentially is going to fund this in one way or the other. Either you pay for your own broadband, you know, which is in a competitive world where you can choose your provider, or the state provides it for you and you pay through it by your taxes. I mean, there's no free lunch here.
Well, it's not. It's about improving. It's about running the system for people rather than profit. The system that we have at the moment, OK, you can have choice to pick your broadband, but you're picking between various different packages that are very expensive and pretty rubbish.
But why is the profit motive a bad thing?
Because the profit motive does not look at actually what is at the benefit of the majority of the people.
Sounds like a war on business.
That's a long other discussion.
Summed up the economic argument in one go. Thank you both.
That is what we are.
Very much
that is what
indeed.
we're looking in the Labour Party.
This is All Out Politics. Coming up next, as the main parties make their pitches to business leaders at the CBI conference, we'll ask whose message is likely to go down best.
advice to help people to rather who are doing this is happening for some time now, but I hope. But let me say good morning to Felix. Yeah, hello Felix, how are you? That's good, that's good. I told him already. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me as well? Okay. That's Starr in the UK. That is. Yes, can you hear? Okay, that's good. Wow, can you hear me now? Yeah, it will still be on the same console though. But see, can you hear me? Is it better now? Okay. I think I might know why. I might know why it was that. Okay. Okay. Now I was asking the question that Frank posted some updates from the African countries. Then he was talking about 8 African countries that have agreed to withdraw their financial aid. Yeah, and I was asking, yeah. 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 Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. Alex, just a minute. Frank was making an Okay, now what I'm trying to say is that let me ask what that each time that you have to exchange this currency, dollar makes Okay. 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 That's it. That's it. Thanks. Felix is back. Let me see whether he can hear us. Hello, Felix. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. 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 Thank you very much. Yeah. 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 Thank you very much, Felix. Bye. 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 Where he is, because we
6600.
Book online at www.connect-ta.com. Connect Time Logistics, connecting the dots in worldwide professional delivery services.
Listen to Regina Abban and Lady Caroline every Monday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Point at Starr Radio UK, where we educate the youth and young adults on life issues. Check me out. He tells me my energy is making him tired. Yes! How do you get the energy to do it? I've been told that I have a lot of energy, but my goodness, I think today I have met my match, people. I have met my match, Miss Suzanne. Wow, amazing. One of the things is the start of the darkness. So what did that
myself and the world will adjust. And 2019,
forget the proverbial boardroom. Join me, Simone Frazier, on The CEO, the program that gives you the driving seat over your life. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m. only on Starr Radio.
Welcome back to the program Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. I apologize for the break in sound. Those of you on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, those of you listening from that side, I think it's sorted. Can you give me a thumbs up if you are listening to us from there and you can hear us loud and clear? Well, it is Starr Radio UK. Now, we'll be having a look at the election that is taking place here and elections that is going to be taking they are all that in Ghana is going to be a referendum and election, and then we're looking at the elections here in the UK. But here, quickly, we just touch on one story and then we'll move on to Ghana. Now, I don't know whether, Frank, you chanced on that. There was a documentary that was aired yesterday. That was aired yesterday on ITV. That was very late, pertaining to this lady that Boris Johnson had. This was he was a mayor. They said, oh, he had an affair with Jennifer Akori. And now this lady said that she's been trying to, after all that skirmishes, everything that had gone on, you know, when he was trying to be the leader of the Conservatives, that's when the whole thing came out. Okay, and then we thought that it's died down, and now he wants to be another, what we call it, legitimate prime minister. Now this thing is rolled its ugly head again. We had the lady coming on saying that she traveled to the UK last week. She's here and she wanted to talk to Boris Johnson. Called the number 10, I think his mobile line, and then he said when he heard it, somebody just took the phone, started talking, speaking English as if he's a Chinese person. So, and then dropped the call. Then later on, now she tried to call him again, and he heard him say like hello, you know, when you don't want to talk to, you can pretend as if you cannot hear the person and drop the call again. And she's furious about the whole thing. But I'm looking at it at the timing. I was saying that if it was some part of the world, they would have said that it's opposition who is pushing this woman to do that. But here we can see that Boris Johnson.
Don't rule the opposition out. But actually, things like that, I don't know where to begin, but let me do it. Let me go this way. You see, the lady should know that the security clearance that was around Boris at that time,
when he was a mayor,
is different from what the case is today. Different from what the case is today. If you call him Boris line now, you have to be cleared. And if it has to do with a lady who there's a problem already, it will be foolish on his minders to just allow you direct access like that.
You don't know who is tapping into his.
They don't even know who you are with.
Well.
It will be very, very, very foolish. On behalf of his minders, to allow, he should even thank God that she could even make the language. They could have spoken heavenly language. which she couldn't have understood.
Understood a word of it.
Are you get me? She didn't understood hello.
Mm-hmm.
If they have told her some
yeah.
Like
Chinchon,
that's why she said it was like a Chinese, so it could be. So at the end of the day, actually, you know, every phone call that goes to Boris phone will be screened. It will be screened.
Yeah.
And there's an official phone, there's a private phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we know but actually, I think the minders did the right thing.
Okay.
Why this time?
It's still going on.
Why
saying
this
that
time?
it should man up and call. Meanwhile,
does he want to Boris.
This time round is too big for
Because for the woman to travel all the way here.
Yeah.
There was a point in time they wanted to speak to her. She said she wasn't going to be speaking.
Yeah.
But she's now flew here.
Yeah.
And I want to talk.
Yeah.
I hope there's a score to be settled. Observers, on this, we shall be spectators.
Yes. Well, Starr Radio UK for you, the morning show. One other story, and then we'll move on. I don't want to talk about the Prince Andrew's story because it's making the rounds there already. You want to comment about it, you can feel free to do so. But it's one story. Oxford Union debate, blind student violently pulled from seat. The story says a blind student who was violently removed from a prestigious debating society has been cleared of any wrongdoing. Ebenezer Azamati was accosted by a security guard when he tried to return to a seat he had earlier reserved before the debate on the 17th of October. He said he was very pleased that claims of false violent disorder were retracted by the Oxford Union. The union has been asked for comment. The postgraduate student from Ghana said his treatment made him feel unwelcome in the union, Oxford, and even the country. The Oxford University African Society said Mr. Zamati, who is visually impaired, was forcibly and violently prevented from re-entering the union to resume the seat before the debate at the union. It said he arrived to the union in Freewind Court early to reserve his seat in the chamber before the debate and then returned to his college. The student was then confronted by a security guard when he tried to return to his seat. So Mr. Azamati sat in another seat offered by another member before staff attempted to remove him. The society said even if he had re-entered when the debate had started, such poor treatment through violent means remains unjustifiable. Now, Nwamaka Gbona, president of the Oxford University Africa Society, said a security guard had told Mr. Zamati he could not enter the chamber because the union was full, despite the student having apparently reserved a seat. Now, Ms. Ogbonna said the argument that he had to leave because there was not any seat is invalid. People are allowed to even stand. And he said, I think everyone is quite perplexed. Now, this is a Ghanaian student who has come here. I don't know what I think because they said he was in his college. That is, he's been enrolled in Oxford University, and now was coming for this union thing. And
actually, the security officer over there could be acting based on instructions.
Okay.
Could have been. I mean, there are two things. There are two ways you could look at it. That there was a failure in protocol.
Okay.
They could have gotten instructions. The hall is full. Don't allow anyone to enter again. That could be the instruction that could have been handed over
to the security. Okay.
Now, when they were checking in and out, how did they put in a system in place to be able to determine who has already? Because I could come in, I could go out to do something. We've not been told that there's instruction that once you stepped in, you cannot go out.
Or when you step out, you cannot come back in.
I don't think I'll be right. I'll be wrong to think that even the bathroom, the washrooms, were within the corridors. Which means that for someone who wants to use that facility, they necessarily have to step out of the hall. Now, if I stepped out of the hall and I'm coming back, how do they identify me as someone who has already secured their seat. 2, what was the time? Was it late? And according to this story, it was within time.
Yeah.
Then I move on to the third aspect. Was it a bit of preconceived and the way they acted? Actually, I am the last person to want to use race card easily, quickly on some of these issues. I want to look at our other possibilities before we zero it down to the race card, because some people will be quick to say, oh, it's because it was racism. I do not believe too much in that. I know racism, institutional racism exists. I know that. And for those who are interested, there's a speech that was delivered by one doctor, I've forgotten the name, but he lectures at one of these universities. The last year when we were in Parliament, he delivered a very powerful speech on race inequality and how institutionally academic institutions in this country are racist. He's a lecturer, but we have the video, and I think we might have to. Recently, I saw one of his videos where he was addressing Oxford College, also being circulated by white people, and again he was tackling the institutionalized racism within the academic sector. I mean, he was an Oxford lad. He is a graduate of Oxford. He was saying what he faced and how from the look of it, he look at how blacks and minority are discriminated against from all walks of life, from the time they enroll, the time they are birth, even up to the time they are, and then 1 or 2 people are picked amongst us to be celebrated,
and we say that we are being
cover it up. Are you getting me? So I do not want to just conclude that it was as a result of racist issues. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if they were what they call protocol failures, Oxford should come out and admit. But if everything a protocol was done very perfect, well, we had the checking system. The time was what they call it. He was within time. We had a system where probably he had a tag that when you go, you can come in. Then they question them, what motivated? What motivated the security officers to do that? Why couldn't they listen to any explanation? Could they have verified that he gave them his name? They verified because they support this shoot.
And see that these are the ones who are booked going there.
They were just especially we are being told he's blind.
Yeah.
Are you getting
visually impaired?
Visually impaired. That even makes it worse. So we're looking at treatment being handed down to a vulnerable person. Where are the lawyers?
The lawyers are there. So hopefully, this one
he can graduate too.
Yes, money don't come. Money don't come.
Because this, I think the treatment. Look. They want to look at all the other things that could have gone wrong. If all of them were in place, then you want to look at the motive and the motivation behind the security people acting what I will call today unduly heavy-handed. Are you getting me?
Well, listen, Starr Radio UK. I think we will take a leave for the Career 101 today, because there are a few issues that we have to discuss, and I've got 25 minutes, and I know Linda is en route to Cyprus. So, Linda, can we take your time? She says yes. Thank you very much. Okay, that is a very sharp and a strong message sent to me. Okay, now looking now to one international story before we move on from and then go to Ghana. Now we have protesters who in Hong Kong once again, and the clashes that was going on, where the border between Hong Kong and mainland China, where the university, the Chinese university is, I mean, was blocked and everything, and the students, the protesters barricaded themselves. Then we had the soldiers now, or the police coming in this time with all force and trying to get that, and now we know that border has been opened for people, free flow of people. But until when will China now step in Because I can tell you that the economy of Hong Kong is virtually getting to zilch.
Actually, it's gone. Actually, the economy of Hong Kong is completely gone. That I can tell you. Companies have shut. They've closed down. Some diehards are still there, but those who can afford have left. Most of them have left that country. But actually, the Chinese soldiers are already there.
Yeah.
Because yesterday they were engaged in cleaning.
He said, we are not beating you. We see what you are doing. We are cleaning it.
They were there dressed in shorts and this thing. And if you look, I'll show some videos. Cleaning. The mess the protesters have left, the soldiers were there helping to clean up. So they are being good guys now.
No.
They want to see how the international community will see their positive side.
That's good. It's good that you brought that up because I wouldn't have talked about that though. But now it's good that you brought that up. Yeah.
If that fails, and yesterday, I think the police, I will not condemn them.
They were a bit strong-handed, but you think they deserve.
These are protesters have resorted to what they call bull and arrow. Yesterday, the spokesperson of the police was actually wounded by a bull.
Yeah.
So they had bows and arrows.
Yeah, with fire. They would,
the police.
Yeah.
Actually, now we go. I think we understand about 500 of them are still barricaded in this thing. They were even burning the bridge.
Yeah.
Actually, but yes, we want democracy. I understand. And I'll support every move that brings democracy. But when it becomes so violent the way it is in Hong Kong, I want to distance myself from it. It is not a case where, especially when, look, this is not start as a protest to demand voting. Okay? It started because you wanted a bill withdrawn, which has been. Why don't you, through your MPs, now put in place or demand that you want to see the executives elected, the chief executive elected, kind of a prime minister, way of doing stuff. If after that they do not, or they over time the Chinese government or decides, okay, no, we're not going, then probably we might have to think of a bit of protest. I now call it Occupy Parliament. Are you get me? But when you've gone on this destructive route, actually they have a bit of a problem. I think they've been too destructive. Yeah, the protesters have been too destructive. And which
it's very sad. It's very, very sad. They earlier on they had a right cause to demonstrate and do all that. We supported them from the word go, but the way they've escalated the whole thing to now just destroying, not respecting other people's stance. It's actually
my friend in Hong Kong. He just flew. He went last Monday. He's still there. He'll be back. He said, Frank, it's gone. So Hong Kong is gone. So Hong Kong is gone. It will take years for Hong Kong to come back to
where it was.
And it might not. Because to even convince those people to come back, it's going. He said he shut down his factory.
Yeah, he will just move it to maybe Singapore or something. All the
workers are gone. He's withdrawn every dime in the banks. He's put his house on sale. Are you getting me? He put his house on sale. His daughter is already here. The wife is already moving. The property, the other said they're looking to sell them at below market price.
Because
they are out within hours. They are out. Actually, but again, what can we say?
Don't you think that maybe the UK could have intervened better than what?
What can they do?
Because they are protesting against China.
Actually, is it possible that UK and what they call the UK government, the US government are backing the protesters?
They seem to be speaking in favor of the protesters.
Could it be that they're even engineering it? We asking questions.
Well, people cite up document dossiers to just marry whatever they want to do. So, everything is possible.
Everything is possible. Anything is possible. You cannot rule it out. So for me, the ultimate aim of the protesters and their actions, I don't know if they do know that the impact is having on the country over there is that it's affecting. So it has affected Hong Kong economy, and it's going to affect Chinese economy greatly. Is that the main aim? And if that's the aim, who benefits from Chinese economy suffering? So you don't take the protest just as a protest. You're gonna look at the likely consequences that will happen, the likely beneficiaries, either directly, indirectly, remotely, or whatever, who might be interested in a Chinese economy going down, suffering, or Hong Kong economy. Who might be interested now? Who will he benefit? Could it be that such individuals are actually giving are invisible hands
behind
some of these actions? Are you getting me?
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad. Do you think that it's going to get to a point where maybe the Chinese will say, look, after all, the whole thing is ruined. So all the financial muscle that Hong Kong had, it's no more there. Why do we waste our time? But we know that they like to take territories where they can put their troops and stuff to. I mean,
what the Chinese government has done is to give a full backing. They say they're not going to intervene directly, but they are giving the backing to the chief executive. And they've asked, and they've said specifically that it is time they bring the chaos to the protest to an end. They've been strong in saying that over the last few days. So you should expect the police acting. Hong Kong is a city where you hardly will see a police taking being heavy-handed on. They don't do that. Okay, the police are known to be friends of the society. Even guns they don't carry. But it's going to a point where now a lot of those police officers have not been involved in such actions before. They don't have to basically manhandle protesters or something. They've just done their job as civil. A civil police force over years. But now that is changing. Some of them probably might have to go for even better training to equip themselves better. Actually, you're going to see more of police reaction, and they're going to be more of arrest, more of beatings, probably killing of some of the protesters.
Are we going to see a Tiananmen Square thing happening where a few people will be shot, a few people will be killed? I mean, not, and then that will now let people sit up and say, "Hey,
I think that mass level will not happen again. Mass level will not happen again." And just this morning, a court in Hong Kong has also given what do you call it, the protesters a bit of more ammunition. The police said you cannot protest with your mask. The court has said that is unlawful. That the protesters cannot go and protest
with their mask on.
Okay, it's just like the way we had a police action here, which said that Extinction Rebellion.
We can't demonstrate.
And the court said no, that is stepping on the fundament.
I think some of these judges, sometimes we need to take them for.
They are just interpreting the law, and that's what they are doing. You can't do anything about it. That's what the law says.
Oh my
It's their uniform. They are wearing it. I mean, are you telling me that if a Muslim wear
Becca, you should go and take it?
Yeah, if I decide to wear even my pants on my head and
I think I'm going to bring another movement. Wear your bandages on your head. Let's go to town. Let's see what's going to happen. Well, listen to Starr in the UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. 14 minutes to the top of the hour. Just some update. Now, Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire former mayor of New York, who has made moves towards running as a presidential candidate, has apologized for backing the city's stop and frisk policy. Stop and frisk disproportionately targeted Black and Latino residents. Now, speaking at an African American church in Brooklyn, New York, Mr. Bloomberg said the policy was a mistake. Now, the question is it because now that he wants to run for presidency and thinking that when it comes to the Democrats, we have blacks and the Latinos supporting that, that's why he's now trying to lean towards that.
He would have been a very foolish man if he has not apologized.
Okay.
Especially addressing them.
Okay.
That same policy was what caused Hillary.
Okay.
Hillary supported that policy.
Okay.
Which disproportionately went against the blacks.
Yeah.
Hillary was never forgiven
for that
by a lot of blacks within, and that's why Detroit, Pennsylvania, does constituted or does help the Republican to win that seat, because a lot of blacks who could have voted to make that change, because if Pennsylvania had been won by them Democrats, they would have. That's why you realize in 2016, Obama went there several times. But you know what, bro? You're black.
Yeah.
You know,
let the one who made that statement, let them come and apologize. Yeah.
It affected Hillary. And I know he's seen that. And that's why now he's. And I think it is a very, very good move that is made to get it started. Apologizing at this time. Because if it does not, actually, it will affect him.
Okay.
It will affect him. So it's good that he's apologized.
Okay.
And I do hope that you'll be forgiven. Let's hope.
Hopefully. Well, listen to Starr Radio UK. Dave West, say hello, gentlemen. Watching you on Jenny's laptop. Thank you very much, Jenny, for allowing Dave to use your laptop to watch us. Dave, I hope you are doing very well. We hope to see you tonight on the Conscious Reggae Time. And Mr. Coffee P, wherever you are, massive good afternoon to you. But we are about to bring the program to an end. We're going to Ghana to have a look at some of the stories making their rounds there. Now, apart from the elections where the referendum that the president of the Western Regional House of Chiefs, Ojiahoho Yao Jebi II, has called on the National House of Chiefs to immediately withdraw the no decision on the December 17th referendum. The paramount chief of Sehi Anyawaso Traditional Council said he was unhappy with the reaction of the president of the National House of Chiefs, Togbe Afedzi, is it the 14th, calling some of the colleagues as dishonest. According to the paramount chief, it is never true that the House met on the issue. Now, speaking this morning, Jiahoho Jebi II said the leadership of the various regional houses of chiefs were neither informed nor consulted about the National House of Chiefs' decision to issue a statement rejecting the proposal of making local level elections partisan.
Ajay.
Yeah.
This story, when it started coming last Friday, I said, Kofi Ali, come for your stone. I said, Kofi Ali, come for your stone. But actually, it actually speaks of the hypocrisy, the lies of our institution, and the over politicization of our system. Since when a decision that is to be taken by the National House of Chiefs has to be approved by all the regional House of Chiefs before they
make a decision?
It's not the first decision I've taken, because it is assumed that they have decisions, they have representatives at the National House of Chiefs. Besides, actually, I am very skeptical. I'm not saying I believe one side. For I am very skeptical that the president of the National House of Chiefs will issue a statement without consultation. It baffles me.
So you said that Togobe Afedi didn't make that statement?
He's gone out to call them liars.
Yeah.
He's called the other fellows liars.
Yeah.
He is the president of
the National House
of Chiefs. When he issued that statement, not too long then Ochihini came to say that no, they reject that, and that was not the decision that Nananums, the public should wait for Nananums. So now we have Nananums and we have
National House of Chiefs.
Others came with conflicting issues. That what they agreed was that it should be made partisan, but certain positions should be reserved for the chiefs.
Oh.
Conflicting.
Oh. Okay.
Some of us say no. I now urge each and everyone to vote no. Because I've looked at it and we said we're going to have a time to
discuss that.
And my position is that with the kind of vicious politics that we practice in our system, it's a well thought. I mean, it's a noble decision. Those entrenched articles, changing them to let this, and that's fine. But making it partisan, for me, it is dangerous. It is dangerous for us because already certain appointees are made by the government.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make that partisan, the party in power can use its influence.
Yeah.
So you basically electing a government, an executive majority in parliament, and all the way down to the unit committee level assemblymen all becoming partisan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you getting me? Electing these people is great, but making it partisan, our system is not ready for that.
So, do you think that the MMDCEs, MMCEs and DCEs, they should be made partisan? And then when it comes to the other representatives, that is the assemblymen, they should be out of that. Do you think is that what you're trying to say?
I will go as far as saying they should not, even that should not be made partisan. But even let's assume we make it partisan. If we make it partisan, that's more reasonable than the unit assembly. But actually, my view is that look, at that level, the way our democracy works, if you take the UK, I'll clap for it, let it be partisan.
Yeah.
Are you getting me? If you take Germany, I'll clap for let it be partisan. But with our system, actually, I'm looking at this this is a specific case issue.
Yeah.
Knowing the kind of politics that we
practice,
I wouldn't go for even that district position
being partisan at all,
because that affects development in that area.
But the current one is such that now the president who appoints everybody. So if a particular area the people didn't vote for the president and he appoints that person there, what is he trying to do?
Okay, he's trying to carry out what they call his political, the president's wish and wishes. But do you know what happens when you introduce partisanship into it? With one system, you monetize the system. You then begin to put a price tag.
Okay.
On that position.
Okay, that's it.
Which therefore means that I'm going to campaign, and we know how they bribe their ways into that.
Yeah.
And therefore, resources over there have been elected. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Once you get elected, firing and hiring becomes difficult.
Yeah.
So you now have a term within which you can go for a re-election. It means that you can do anything that you want.
Yeah.
Thinking that in 4 years' time you can bribe your way through. Are you getting me? So our politics is not as clean as we see it. It is so dirty. It is so vicious. It is so corrupt. It's been so monetized that if we monetize or we make that system partisan at the grassroots, my fear is that we now begin to have a too much monetization. But with now, if we have a good leader, the good leader can fire and hire you if you know. In fact, it will be worse than what we have now.
But do you think that maybe if we're going to elect them, but it's not going to be partisan. Nobody should be affiliated.
100%. You can be a political party. You can belong to a party. You, because we all vote and we do vote. So in one way or the other,
we all belong to
a party.
Yeah.
Even district assembly, even the unit committees and assemblies. Like, I mean, we know politics, but that's on the quiet. That's on the quiet. We know the.
But wouldn't that be hypocrisy of a sort? Because listen, we are financing them, they are pushing them, actually, but behind the scenes.
The other thing that you look at is that there are people who are able to stand, contest those positions without necessarily being
backed by any of the parties and yet win.
And they could even belong to minority parties who might not have that financial strength to compete with the two giant political parties. Look, it will just be a time NDC and MPP, they will use it and they will rip the citizens of what. Because at the end of the day, I need to fight for my election.
Yeah.
We do fight for elections. Are you getting me? I say, this is chief executive, your boreholes. If
interesting.
So for me, I'll opt for election, but I think we're not ready for electing on partisan basis yet. In fact, I will even go as far as let's look at how this bill can even look at strengthening the financial devolution of power, so that now we have a bit of a level of decentralized system. But one thing that we still control from this, the top, is the financial power of that. So that the District Assembly Common Fund is still being controlled by the Assembly Common Fund Administrator. And then the government even decides what they use those money for, which should not be the case. Which shouldn't be the case, okay? Some monies are even taken from source before they even get there. And I'll keep on, I will always say this, what do you call it, Zoom Lion example, which for me was a bad deal.
At least they're always against that.
Yeah, was a bad deal on the local people. So actually, we could go. Now back to the chief issue.
Yeah.
Actually, the problem you see being displayed out publicly, again tells you how politicized our National House of Chiefs is. It's a well politicized institution. Many have said Ochinhini because he comes from Akufo-Addo's area.
Yes.
And therefore he's leading the crusade to back the government decision. Because the government has decided yes. That's what government said. So if he says no, it will be a stab on Akufo-Addo's back. Is that the case? We don't know. But I find it very, very difficult. I find it very, very difficult to accept the position that the president of the National House of Chiefs took a unilateral decision to alter that letter that was distributed to the public. And I think it would be very, very offensive on his part to call his colleagues chiefs
liars.
That's an insult. That is an insult.
If actually they agreed on it and then or they didn't agree. I mean,
the only way you have the audacity to call them liars is if you have evidence.
Of course.
That we agreed on it.
Of course.
When it went out, you are now coming to change your position. And that is a lie.
Interesting. Kofi, sorry, today I'm not picking you because it's 1 o'clock. If I pick you, we're going to go on. We'll discuss more about it tomorrow. Listeners, this is Starr Radio UK. We are bringing the program to a close. Kofi will not be able to speak for 5 minutes. I know that he will go on, and I don't want to cut him. So, yes. Before we go, Frank,
let me apologize to our listeners that Ozias Muntuze, Kisi, Chris, and Veron, and all others. We sincerely apologize for the loss in sound briefly. We let's say we apologize.
Yeah, we apologize. We sincerely apologize for that.
We sincerely apologize. And thank you for your continued support. What is going on, Archie? We thank them and we say they should stay tuned to Star Radio UK. We're bringing them lot of stuff. In the coming days, we'll be unveiling, we'll be talking more about what we're gearing out to. We're becoming gradually a global star.
Yes.
So stay tuned wherever you are. If you like to be part, you have interest in becoming part of this vision that we're building. Wherever you're located, once you are not beneath the earth.
If you are even beneath the earth, you want to join us, why not?
Are they going to use Sonar Radar?
They're going to use Sonar Radar together.
Are you going to use Sonar Radar? Please get in touch with us. Send us a message. And some people have actually messaged us on Facebook. We've not responded to them yet. The team is working on it, and I can guarantee that we can guarantee that they'll get back to you in due course. But wherever you are, if you want to be part of us, Pastor Jenkins all the way in Liberia, please expect a call for us, and listeners, stay tuned to Star Radio Liberia, which will be coming your way pretty shortly. We'll be unveiling the whole vision of. Let's say, what do you remember that AU11?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
AU11. Right.
Yeah.
It's bright.
Yes.
And Star Global. Jamaica, our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, the star is bright. Not too long.
Yes.
We'll have Star Jamaica. So we're working behind the scene very, very hard.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, thank you very much. And let me say thank you very much to Mr. Katie Botsman also, who also joined us this afternoon on the morning show. And to all of you who have tuned in to listen to us, don't go away. We're taking this quick announcement, and then I bring the program to a close. The Grace Encounter Christian Center, aka Grace Ministries, would like to officially invite you to the 4th annual Women's Conference themed Adding Value to the Lady of Grace. The focus is empowering, equipping, and encouraging women to lead a balanced and purposeful life. Empowering, equipping, and encouraging women to lead a balanced and purposeful life. The date is Saturday, the 30th of November. The time is 4 to 8 p.m. And the venue is the Crown Plaza Hotel, Bridges Wharf, Battersea, SW11 3BE. The Crown Plaza Hotel, Bridges Wharf, Battersea, SW11 3BE. Remember, it is the 4th edition of the annual Women's Conference of the Grace Encounter Christian Ministries.
You finished that announcement?
Yes, I finished that announcement.
Okay, let me bring 2 announcements quickly.
Okay, yes.
One is a social announcement, and one is an appeal. Again, the Rules Mission appeal goes on. We're supporting Rules Mission. The good thing is that people are responding. Yesterday, 3 days ago, there was a miracle that happened because of this. And we thank them. Very soon, we're going to be playing the advert of that unorganized. If you do business and you want to help a charity cause, we're ready to also help promote your organization. It's part of our corporate social responsibility, and we're ready to do that. The other announcement is what I'm going to read. Actually, you're a man of let me call you a man of God. So call it that way. We are men of God, right? Obviously, you're a man of God. Malik, you're a man of God. Let me read this advert. It says, "I am a man of God from India, but currently in Ghana to help people in terms of their problems like money, lotto numbers, traveling to abroad, lack of job, marriage, instant money, work problem, business improvement, enemies protection, sickness, pocket no dry, lack of leadership, court case, money rituals, and many more. You can call me on this WhatsApp number. Actually,
I think the Bank of Ghana should go and contact you.
You know, we're talking about, people's quest for instant worth.
Yeah.
Because some of these people left me alone. Now, these are the comments. I just want to, people should think. Please, let this be your first and last time you send me this. Help your families with it.
Somebody said that.
Another person, Stephen Jimadu, is a man of gods.
Gods, smaller S. Okay, smaller G or whatever.
Benjamin Ameno Atito. He hijacked Mr. Ernest Ohini's account.
Oh my.
I'm driving at something. Then another person, Ernest Ohini again. You call yourself man of God. What? Actually, if you listen to us, you see some of this, my advice, block them. These are fake magicians that extort money for the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
If, in fact, they can get instant money, they should go and help their families first.
Yeah. India, there are lots of people who are struggling. Why didn't you go to...
They should go and help their families first. They should go and donate those monies to charity. Someone told me something yesterday that they approached a friend that they want to help them secure visa to abroad. When they were probing where they were taking them to Haiti. Actually, I will not finish. I will not finish. They were flying them from Ghana
to Haiti.
So they were
you have been flown.
Guess how much they were supposed to pay?
How much?
15,000 Ghana cedis.
To take you to Haiti?
Yeah, abroad. Listeners, have a wonderful afternoon.
Well, listeners, that's where we bring the program to a close. We are here to inform you, educate you, and entertain you, right?
And warn you as well.
And warn you.
Against criminals.
Well. On that note, we say thank you very much for tuning in. But like we said, don't go away. Our DJs will be taking over from now till 5 o'clock when Empress Regina comes your way with On Point. And then at 7 o'clock, we have no other one but Tony Williams, who will also be in the hot seat, bringing you the Mindset program. And then exactly at 10, we have the maestro himself, Dave West, bringing you Reggae Time. On that note, we say enjoy your afternoon and continue to stay tuned to Starr Radio UK. Tell a friend to tell a friend. But we go with this one from Freddie Melway. He says, Zoblazo, if you hear all these things, what would you say? I think you'll be short of words. Zoblazo will do it. Have a top of the day. It's me, Archie, and Mr. Frank David saying bye-bye for now.
Yeah.
debate.